All right, guys. Hey, now it's Rob here from Rob's School of Music with the legend, Adam Neely.
How's it going? Legend. Oh,
Legend.
wow.
Oh, my dude. Millions of people listen to your words. That makes you a legend.
Crazy.
So thanks so much for being here. It's really, really awesome to get to talk to you a second time and just kind of pick your brain about, everything you're putting out there with the content. You are a great source of not only inspiration, but just an educational resource. Every video just seems to outdo the last in terms of their perspective. And, it's like, wow, I never thought I wanted to know so much about the girl from Ipanema. But afterwards, I'm like, holy shit, that's really crazy.
Yeah. It's an honor to be here and talking with you again, and I'm excited to talk and hang out. This is great.
Awesome, dude. So I'll do some questions about like the theory side of things and the YouTube side of things, but I'm gonna twist a question that I asked to a lot of other people, or I'm gonna ask it two different ways, and then maybe you can answer it however it makes sense to you. Hopefully, it makes sense coming out of my face.
All right.
So, being that we're a music school, we do lessons. Pre-COVID, we would do hundreds of lessons a week, and now we do everything online. We've done almost 3,000 online lessons in the past 6 months, which is insane to me. But back when we could do in-person lessons, we would do performances. And a lot of our students are young, not always in age, but just in musical experience. And stage fright, anxiety is a factor. And then part two of that question, a lot of them are trying to create content for the internet, and they can be super personable, but the second they throw this in their face, they just freeze.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's the same set of emotions, but do you have any tips for that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a very different thing when you're performing live in front of people versus when you're recording content for the internet. At least for me, I found that they're two different things. Because when you're creating content for the internet, you can always edit yourself, you can always go back. But I think the best thing to think about is to try and just get yourself in the mindset of being in a room with your friends. That, I feel like, reads the best as a performer, hanging out, goofing around, making each other laugh. And it doesn't matter if you're performing live or if you're recording stuff for the YouTubes, the Instagrams, or whatever. When we're performing music, what we're really trying to do is create the sensation of community. And it's a hard thing to do when you're young, to feel like, you put so much pressure on yourself to perform the best, to, get that lick perfect or whatever. And that sense of community, I feel like for me in my life, just being around my friends, I can let go. Performing is all about letting go. And I think trying to get yourself in that headspace. Record with your friend, like a really trusted person that you know is not going to judge you, that you know is going to be there for you just as a friend. That, I think, is what it's all about. It's hard, though. And honestly, for me, to this day, I still need to constantly remind myself. I have a group of friends. There's a band, Aberdeen, that I play with a lot. That's basically all we do is we get on stage and goof around. And that's the most comfortable I feel every time, is being with my friends. So the more you can get into that mindset of just like, it's just music. We're hanging out. I think the better it is for people. Also remembering to breathe. Breathing is very important. Believe it or not, hot take, breathing is necessary for life.
Words of wisdom.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. I agree. I think the communal element is super important. I was
For
a
sure.
super shy guy my entire adolescent life, and music gave me confidence and a personality and, an identity. So
Yeah, it's hard. And, that's why I think it's important to be friends with the musicians that you play with. Because that like, for me, like, it's a way of connecting with other people. And the more that you really tap into that, the better a musician and the more fun you'll have. Like two things: better at music and better at connecting, making music make sense for you too.
awesome, very cool. What was there a particular record or a concert or something in your younger years that you're like, oh, that's what I want to do?
Yeah, there definitely was. So when I was 14 years old, my parents took me to a performance. The late great jazz pianist Dave Brubeck was playing in Washington, D.C., and he was playing a duo concert with Christian McBride, who's this really amazing upright bass player. And, it was fairly straightforward jazz, basically. It was straightforward jazz from a jazz legend, Dave Brubeck. But I had never seen it done live before. I'd never seen two people actually improvise and interact with one another and have fun. And it was a really formative moment for me because I could see them up close and personal. And they were laughing. They were basically telling jokes to one another through music. And I had never really seen that before. I was like, well, music is just sounds, and you play the music and you get it right on your exam or whatever, because I was taking piano lessons at the time, and it wasn't very fun for me. But I saw these two people speaking a language back and forth, and I thought, like, man, this is really cool because they're operating at a higher level. There's just like a higher thing that they're doing, and they're having so much fun, and they're so joyous. And that was the moment where I was like, well, I kind of want to do this. I kind of want to speak this language with other people. I kind of want to have this kind of interaction with another human being, because it was clear that they were doing something. I didn't quite understand what they were doing, but they were doing something really special. So that moment when I saw Dave Brubeck and Christian McBride play, it was 14 years old. And then, of course, seeing Korn live when I was 15. That was also formative because I could see like a whole stadium going up and down and rocking out to like Twist. That was also a formative moment. Two things, two extremes, but yeah.
That is the furthest I could have imagined, but it makes sense.
It's all music, man. It's all music. It's all the same. It really is.
Dude, it totally is. Like when I was in high school, 10th grade, 11th grade, Korn and Limp Bizkit and all those bands, that's when that was happening. And I talk to students about it now, and they're like, what? And I'm like, you wait 20 years, you're going to look back, and you're going to be going, oh, who am I listening to? So,
yeah, that's funny. Like, I know there's this guy, an 18-year-old kid that I was talking to recently. He had never heard of Limp Bizkit, or he like vaguely had heard of Limp Bizkit, and was like, guy, I got a thing to show you. Let me talk to you about Nookie. Let me talk to you about $3 Bill, y'all. Let me talk to you about Rollin'. All these songs, which admittedly are fairly cringy and I think are kind of trash, but at the same time, very important in what I consider to be fun and exciting.
They served a purpose.
And Fred Durst, man, he's actually a pretty cool dude. He's from what I hear, he's still at it. So
it's so funny how like certain things, and that's something like I kind of wanted to get your opinion on, because you hipped me to a book, the Sweet Anticipation book.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm always trying to explain to people how music is making you feel, and then beyond that, the experiential component that's going to make you connect to it. I have a student, her name is Faith, and every week, an hour leading into that lesson, I'm singing the Limp Bizkit version of Faith in my mind, because that song just mattered at some point in my life, and she's the only other human I've met with that name, and it connects.
Yeah. Music has this. It's like music and smell. They're two, senses, I guess. They have this profoundly nostalgic experience to them, elements to them. I hear a song I haven't heard in 10 years, and it immediately brings me back to a specific place, a specific location. If I'm running, I'll like run around my neighborhood. I'll be running by a certain building, and then I know exactly on the run that I did 6 months ago what verse of what song I was listening to when I walked, or when I ran past that building, just because there's a deep memory element to music, which is
Sure.
super, super cool. And I don't think we really give it enough, importance, because it's such a part of us, because we're remembering our past and because we're remembering all the stuff that's very important to us. Music has that kind of element of letting us tap into ourselves. So Faith, that's an important part. Hey, why not? It's Limp Bizkit, but man, they serve a purpose.
And what kind of music are you listening to when you're running? That's kind of a cool thing.
Yeah. Well, Wolfpack is a pretty good. They're funk band. I like them when I'm running. I like the French Canadian producer Anomaly. He's great, electronic jazz, R&B stuff, good stuff. A lot of podcasts too. I listen to podcasts a lot, so.
Cool, man. So on the theory side of things, I mean, you have answered. I mean, I teach music for a living, and you have answered questions that I can't figure out sometimes, and that's so inspiring. When did the passion for that come into your world? Because I find, particularly with my guitar students, they push back. They just want to shred, and they don't want to know why.
That's a good question. I mean, I've always kind of had this very, I guess, what is it, left-brained, right-brained? What's the more analytical? I don't know. I've always had a fairly like analytical mind when it comes to things that I enjoy, because I want to figure out why do I enjoy it, and I like to pull it apart and tease out the answers. You know, I one of the reasons I think, you know, I got into Tool when I was in high school, and then that led to Dream Theater. And then, you know, getting into progressive rock, and it was really that kind of thing. In high school was when I was like, well, what is an odd time signature? Oh, well, you have to count to a number besides 4. Okay, well, what is that all about? And then I had to learn how to do that, to play along with Dream Theater, and that was very exciting. And then I was introduced to jazz partly through that Dave Brubeck concert. And okay, well, in order to play jazz, you have to know these scales and the relationship to keys. Well, this is very interesting. And in order to speak that exciting language that I saw Dave Brubeck and Christian McBride speaking to one another, you kind of had to learn how to apply some kind of theory to your improvisation and your music making. And you couldn't just shred pentatonic scales as much as maybe I wanted to. But I was also a bass player, and bass players have a different relationship to shred than guitar players do. So it was kind of like building on this. I was always looking at these genres of music that I found really interesting, because I'd never heard them before, and I wanted to figure out what their deal was. And it kind of built on from there. And so then when I went on to college, I kind of wanted to really focus on that aspect of that. And I got more into composition and composing for jazz big band was a big thing. Yeah, I mean, it was really coming from trying to figure out how music worked, like what made it tick. And I still haven't figured that out yet. Eventually, one of these days I might, but the more I do this, the more I really am like, no, there's too much, there's too much there. too much to learn, but it's a good thing though, because if there's more stuff to learn, then there's more mystery. And the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know anything. That's a fun feeling. It's a fun feeling. I like that. I
agree. That is a fun feeling. Let's talk about gear for a second. So,
yes.
You know, musical technology and gear, and we have back when people could come into the school, we have a cabinet in the front full of all my guitar pedals, 100 pedals, and we let people take them out like a library. So you can mess around and see, oh, this is the difference between a Phase 90 and a Boss delay pedal, or a Boss phaser. So do you feel like using technology, like for like modeling technology, do you feel like should it be pure, or is it okay to rely on,
I don't know. Well, I like modelers. I like modelers a lot. I was never a gear snob by any stretch. I like gear. It's fun, but honestly, I'd rather just have something that sounds pretty good. The big thing for me personally is I hate latency. Like, I really dislike if I plug into some kind of audio interface, and there's too much latency between the time the signal goes into the computer and then comes back out. I really, really dislike that. I think 5 milliseconds of latency is probably the most I can ever deal with. But beyond that, as long as whenever I play a note and it comes back to me, amp modeling is fine. I use the Line 6 Helix Stomp, or the HX Stomp, for pretty much most things, and I have some aftermarket, third-party impulse responses that are pretty good to model, like SVT cabs and stuff. But yeah, I do it works, because it sounds so good sometimes, especially if you're like running it through decent monitors or decent headphones. Like, it sounds great, and it's very inexpensive, and if it gives access to people to quality gear through modeling, why not? There's no reason. That said, I do really like the Boss OC2 octave pedal, and I would never do a model of that, because it just sounds so good by itself. But beyond that, model everything.
You see
it sounds so good.
They got that new octave pedal they just released, which seems pretty sick.
Oh, Boss does?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Pardon
like,
me while I look it up right now.
do it. Yeah. This girl, Sophie Burrell, I chatted with her a couple months ago. She does the advertisement for it, and it's just awesome. And the tracking is fantastic.
OC5? Okay, well,
It's crazy.
I need to go check it out then.
Cool.
Sick.
All right, let's see how I can phrase this one.
Okay.
So if someone was brand new to music, because I feel like, and this is my perspective, so maybe it's different for other people, but when I was growing up, I graduated high school 2001, and this is obviously pre-iPod and pre-iTunes and iPhone, I should say. So if you liked one thing, that's what you were. If you were a Metallica guy, then you could like Slayer and Megadeth and all that, but you couldn't like jazz. And if you liked Blink-182, you really couldn't dip your toe into even Metallica because it wasn't pure. And I feel like now, from my experience with my students, you're allowed to like everything. Just the world is at our fingertips. It's the coolest thing. If someone were just coming into music, what are certain particular bands or songs you feel like they should check out just to open their mind as much as possible? I know it's a heavy question.
Oh, man. Well, okay. So one person I would recommend, and most people, not most people, but a lot of people know of him already, just to see what is possible. Jacob Collier. Jacob Collier is probably the closest we have to a modern day Mozart, somebody who has an incredible technical ability with composing and performing, and just the theoretical knowledge that he has is just unreal. And he also is very good and writes some catchy songs too. And I think being exposed to Jacob Collier gives you an idea of what is possible for a musician. Now, I don't, you might not necessarily like his music, it might not be the most inspiring, but at the same time, it gives you a glimpse into the world of just the very deep theory, very deep ability, improvisational ability. So, it's beyond that. It's hard to say like what the ultimate piece of music is, or the ultimate musician is, because Jacob Collier is not the ultimate musician, but he does give somebody who isn't a musician an idea of what is possible if you can really go into that like realm. I don't know. I mean, the thing I say whenever people are trying to get into jazz, for example, which is kind of where my background is listen to Miles Davis, Kind of Blue. I also listen to Miles Davis, Relaxin' with the Miles Davis Quintet. Those are some very straightforward, very easy to understand, quote unquote, jazz records, but they do give a really good glimpse into classic jazz for people who don't really know how to get into it. It's very listenable, but also very deep, very melodic, but also very rhythmic. It works well as background music, and it works well if you just focus on it. I don't know. It's a hard question because there's so many ways to answer it. But those are my two: Jacob Collier and Miles Davis, I guess.
Fantastic answers. That's whenever I ask that question, I feel like a jerk because it's an impossible question to answer. But it's more about your perspective, and that's kind of so there's no wrong answer.
It's a good question because now I have to really think about it, and I like thinking about things. I like to not be prepared for things because now. Yeah. All right. That's good. That's
cool,
good.
Man. Yeah. I mean, it's one of my favorite parts about my job is I get to sit down in front of young guitar players and watch their faces blow up when they hear a Jimi Hendrix song or Eddie Van Halen, and it's like it's still kids are getting hipped from a rock perspective to these legends every day.
Jimi Hendrix's performance at Woodstock is still shocking. Like from a modern perspective, if you've never heard it, it is it's unreal. There's nothing like it, and that's so cool that like to be able to see that reaction. Like I have that reaction to listening to things like that all the time, just like what the hell is going on? It's pretty sick. It's pretty sweet. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I truly do. Let's see. Maybe I see one of the kids is here for the question. Can I bring him on and have him ask one of the questions?
Let's do it.
All right. This is going to be Franklin. You're up, buddy.
Hi,
hey, Franklin.
I've been a long-time fan. I'm Franklin. My question was basically, how do you feel about the lack of a lot of physical instruments in modern music? And do you think it's good for the music industry? And like, what does it mean for it as a whole? And you think that more traditional instruments will make a comeback?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's one thing that I think won't come back in the same way that it did in the 1970s and 60s, and when, basically the largest music stars, largest pop stars were guitar heroes and bands and things like that. I don't think it will come back that way, but I do think that there are interesting new venues and new ways that people play physical instruments and share their craft and get excited about that. Like social media is a big one. On Instagram, you'll see people playing, and it's a big part of it. You want to share what you do and perform, with guitars and piano and whatnot. The sound of physical instruments still is very important in modern pop, and also like albums like "Random Access Memories" by Daft Punk. It was like a big hit like 3 or 4 years ago, and it was basically a disco record. It was like bass, it was a full band, live band playing, and it was at the top of every chart. I think young musicians getting into playing today have many, many options available for them. And I don't think, listening to pop music that's been very produced with like synthesizers and drum machines and all that should dissuade them from going out and playing, because there is so much music to be made and there's so many ways of connecting with people with, your craft and your instrument. That I don't think you should think of it as like, well, music is terrible these days and music doesn't have like physical instruments. Yeah, but it hasn't had that for like 30 or 40 years, really. So I think there's scenes that you can have, and I think that you should go out and play as much as you can. And there are ways to connect with people who do play physical instruments, and there's a bright future for many styles of music. Like playing musical instruments is cool.
Awesome. Thank you, Franklin. Great question, dude.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Cool.
Man. Great answer.
Cool.
That guy is, he thinks out of the box in a very cool way. I try to pick the students that are on their way to something different. And I think
awesome.
Yeah.
What does Franklin play?
Franklin is a guitarist, but he also studied cello for many, many years.
All right.
So,
cool.
Bit heavy-handed as a guitar player, but he has stage presence like a madman. So it's it's very cool. Yeah,
that's all you need.
That's kind of like what it is.
Nice.
All right, so let's discuss the YouTube side of things, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So a lot of us as musicians, we're trying to, we're all our own little stars in our own mind, and we want to let the world see everything we're doing. And via social media, we have this amazing platform to connect with people. I'm always trying to say to different people that I come across that, if you do one thing and that's your thing and you think you're the only one who does that thing, I bet there's a whole world of people who are going to love that thing, and now you have a way to show them that thing.
Yeah. That's a good way of thinking about it, for sure.
Yeah, I said thing 1,000 times there, but it
drives home the point. Repetition legitimizes.
So, your videos are so well put together, so well produced. It's overwhelming, I think, sometimes, because everyone can feel intimidated that, oh my gosh, my content needs to be on par with all of these guys out there who are, producing top-notch stuff. What is your process in terms of putting together, say one video, a 10-minute long video? What goes into that to make that occur?
Well, it really depends on video to video. I'll spend maybe, depending on the subject, a month scripting out or like researching some of the stuff for the more research-heavy ones. You mentioned the Girl from Ipanema video. I've been working on ideas for that for 2 years, just because it's something that's just been like in the back of my head. I've been thinking about this song, The Girl from Ipanema, for whatever reason. It just was on a loop in the back of my head. Like, this is a weird song. Why is it so weird? And I just kept like researching and looking more and more into it. I'll say this for anybody who's like looking to get into YouTube, and I'm not sure if this relates to a future question of yours, but I've been doing YouTube for 14 years, which is a little bit less time than the amount of time I've been playing bass. I started playing bass maybe a year or two before I created my YouTube channel. And the way I think about YouTube is that it's like a musical instrument. And the only way of getting better at your musical instrument is to practice it and to do it a lot. And you're gonna not be great in the beginning of it, and that's fine. And you'll see other people who are very skilled at doing YouTube, like very skilled at playing bass or guitar or whatever. And you think that in order to be successful, you need to be as good as they are right now. But that's not how music works, and that's not how learning works. The other thing is it takes a long, long time to really develop your style, your voice, your craft in social media, the same way that it takes a very long time to develop your style, your voice, and your craft with your musical instrument. And you wouldn't expect to get up on stage and have a following and do world tours after 6 months of playing guitar. So why would you expect the same degree of success with 6 months of making YouTube videos or social media? But if you are there for the long haul, you will see some kind of reward and some kind of success because you are dedicated to the craft and you're there because you want to be. You know, you're there to play guitar because you like playing guitar, and that's something that feeds you and makes you feel good, and you can communicate something. And it's the same thing, I think, with YouTube and social media and stuff like that's really the reason why I'm still doing it, you know, for 14 years later, is because I still like to make videos and communicate and talk about things and research things and make meme kinds of things. And, you know, I like it. I like it a lot. This is a thing that I really enjoy doing. And I love meeting people who watch the videos. But yeah, you got to think of it kind of like a musical instrument that you shed. You practice it, you get better at it, and you don't go into it because you don't go into it for the glory. You know, you go, maybe you start playing guitar for like the glory or whatever, but then the reason why you stick it around is because it's the thing that you have to do. It's like, you know, if I would never not play bass because that's what I really enjoy doing. I really enjoy playing music. I can't not do it, so I have to do it. It's kind of the same thing with videos that I make too. And that's my advice. You gotta really, really love it and treat it like a musical instrument.
Dude, that is the best analogy I have heard to that ever.
Thanks, man.
Ever.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot. So,
gosh, that makes it that's even more inspiring than just watching it, because that just makes it make sense. That was beautiful. Thank you. Wow. What do you use? I know. I mean, look at me. I'm yellow, and you're perfectly lit.
Oh man.
Lighting is a big thing.
Lighting is everything.
Yeah. So what do you recommend? You know, for someone just starting out in terms of getting the lighting right.
Yeah. Okay. The best lighting. The way I think about lighting is it's kind of like a microphone, mic technique and mic placement. Very, very important, but often neglected. But it's like the bare bones. The best lighting, honestly, is to get in front of a window. Like, let's say my phone is a window. Well, yeah, you can see the time. This is not the best analogy, but you get in front of a window and the natural light hits you and it looks amazing every time. The one problem with that is, of course, you have to be right in front of a window and it has to be the daytime. You can get cheap LED lights. The big thing is to get what's called a key light, and you want the key light to be at kind of like a 45-degree angle, and then it has to be kind of above you. But the important thing is to always have a soft key light off to the side or natural light. And you know, you can get cheap lights on Amazon for $50 or something like that, but natural light is very important. Right now I have a very large aperture 120D. It's a new light. I'm very excited about it because it looks cool. But for any young person and anybody just getting into it, you don't need to pay any money. Just sit in front of a window. It looks the best.
Wow. Yeah, I saw in one of your recent pictures, you could see your light, and then there was like this black.
Oh yeah,
it looked like sound absorption, but it's not. In front of the light.
It's called a honeycomb. It's basically just for focusing the light. I'm not super technical with any of this stuff. Like if you really wanted to know somebody's, get lighting instruction, there's YouTube videos out there. Hey, that's how I learn everything.
No, I only asked that question because I'm looking at the way you're lit and the way I'm lit, and there's a light in front of me. You can see it washing out my hand, and it just makes me look green and yellow.
Yeah, and there's the cameras too. I'm shooting. So the camera that I'm using, I'm using a capture card. So you can take basically a nice camera and take the output of the nice camera and then use that as your webcam. So I'm using a fairly nice camera too. If I was shooting on a webcam, it probably would not look as well lit right now. But
cool.
There are other tricks of the trade. Just FYI.
Insider secrets.
Yeah.
All right, I see the other guy is down here. So this is Dylan. Though his name will say a different name, but this is truly Dylan.
Okay.
And
Dylan.
let's see what Dylan's going to do.
Oh, hello.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great.
All right. So I was just going to ask, now today, even though we have such a much broader, with the internet, we can access much more music than ever before. Why it's so difficult for some people to still branch out beyond one genre of music, like metalheads or people who are all into classical music, stuff like that.
Why is it hard for people to branch out with other styles of music? That's, I think, a difficult thing to answer. And my answer is you always need some gateway into certain styles of music. Because metal, if you didn't grow up with it, it can be just very loud and obnoxious and just aggressive in a way that doesn't really connect to you. But if you have a friend with you who can say, like, no, check this out, check out this riff. I really like this riff and the way that this riff goes. Immediately, you can then latch on to a musical element within the style of music that, you can, it will make more sense to you. It's the same thing with, like, I don't know, salsa music or something like that. I don't know a lot of salsa music, but somebody once showed me the clave and just the key rhythm to salsa music. And then I could latch onto that, and then it became a lot easier for me to, like, understand and just get into it. And it always is because somebody showed me something, or I read something, or I learned something from another person who said, hey, this is the music that I like, check this out, and this is what I like about it. So I think because music is a social activity, and yes, we have all the styles of music available, and we can listen to a bunch of different things, but people might sometimes stick to certain genres or certain styles. It's just because they don't have that key, that access that lets them get into the mind or get into the music more. And if they had somebody and had the conversation with another musician or another person, like, hey, check this thing out in this music and this is why I like it, then it'd be easier to get into other styles and people would be more likely to. But I think it's more of a social situation, more than a musical one. I'm not sure if that's the right answer, but I think that might have something to do with it, because for me anyway, the reason why, just thinking back to, like, why I listened to certain styles of music and why I didn't listen to certain styles of music, it was pretty much always because, like, I didn't have the appreciation for it. There's like, what is this? This is garbage. I don't like it. And it wasn't because of like not having access to it. It was just because I didn't know what to listen for in the music, whether it was like a certain riff or a certain way that the music felt, or if, like, check out the lyrics, like the lyrics to this song and the lyrics to, like, bluegrass music tell a story. And if you really listen to the lyrics, then it makes sense. And it's like this really cool story that you can follow. So maybe it's that. I don't know. That's probably the best I have.
I'm not looking for anyone else's answer but yours, so it's pretty good.
All right. Well, yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
I have to think about that more, maybe.
All right. Let's see.
Awesome.
All right.
Thanks, Dylan. I'll see you later.
Appreciate it, yeah.
Cool, yeah. Dylan plays drums and guitar, and he's a theory addict. So
hey,
yeah,
theory addict. I know what that's like to be addicted. Get help. I'm kidding.
One of the other questions, there was a student, JP, but he couldn't jump on, so I'll ask it for him. He's a bit older, and he's immersed in music. It's what he does for his job. He plays in a bunch of different bands, and gets burnt out sometimes.
Oof.
Do you have tips for overcoming that when your passion becomes your job and then it starts to be at odds with itself?
Yeah, well, that's something I deal with all the time. And it's honestly that's the main struggle of any musician who has been doing it for a long time, is how do you avoid being burnt out on doing it. And I think for me, it comes in many forms. It comes in, doing a wedding gig, for the 10 trillionth time, and playing September over and over again, which is a fantastic piece of music, and I enjoy playing September, except not on weddings. And then it just, a piece of me dies when I have to do that. Making sure to make your own music for yourself that you aren't getting paid for, and there is no reason why you need to release it. I think, so there's a producer by the name of Mr. Bill that I really, really look up to. His, music production chops are incredible, really interesting textured electronic music that's just like blows your mind every time you hear it. And I was talking to him, and he was saying, like, music is my therapy. Like, music is the thing that if I'm working on touring or like emailing or all this stuff that, it's just like the work aspect of it. I always make sure that I can just go into Ableton Live and just start messing around with stuff and like not even care about it, or not even think about what it's for, or whether or not I'm getting paid. Like, this is the thing that I do just for me. This is the me aspect of it. And I forget to do that sometimes. I'll be practicing for a gig, or I'll be like working on a recording, or I'll be like doing all this stuff, and I forget to just have fun doing it. And it's so easy to get caught up in that aspect of not doing it for fun, especially, and it's weird too, because like if you're making your own music and touring your own music and recording your own music, you can still forget to make music for yourself because it's something that's you're doing as part of your career. And if you're trying to not be jaded, you should always make sure to be able to just sit back and just play the dang bass. I do that. I try to make at least a little bit of time every day, not for practice, for playing. One thing I love doing. This is my favorite thing to do. Put on a Stevie Wonder record and put on the tune "Do I Do," and it's like a 9-minute long song. It's like this funky R&B song, and it's just a really awesome bass line. I just love it, and I just play it for the 9 minutes, and then at the end of those 9 minutes, I'm just like, God, I feel good right now. I feel amped. I feel like I did a thing that fed my soul. And one thing that helps with "Do I Do" is I have never had to play it on a wedding. So it's a song that I've never had to play for money, and I will never play for money, and I will never perform for anybody. "Do I Do," I guess, is like my thing that I just sit in my room and I play "Do I Do." That's just important. It's just to have your thing that's for you and nobody else. And that's one way that I combat being jaded.
That's definitely an awesome answer, because I feel like, me being personal, like from 2015 to 2020, I did 1,000 cover gigs, literally, in 5 years. I played with Gandhi Gonzalez, who's done some wedding gigs with you. And between that and the school for the last 3 years, like music, I listened to music in the gym to lift heavy things, and that's it. And COVID, all of a sudden, there's no more gigs. And I started, my girlfriend is the singer, we're in a band together, started writing music. We put out 2 songs, then we had Dave O'Day do a dance remix of one of the songs, and it's like all of a sudden I'm reborn like a freaking phoenix. Yeah. So I get it, man.
Yeah, I mean, the cover gigs, they're so fun sometimes, but that's not music for yourself.
Right.
Like doing those cover gigs can be so fun, and like making some bread and money, and they could also be incredibly jading. But you get sucked into the idea sometimes of like, well, like I'm having a ball here, like I'm making money, there's a party here, and like I got work, and like it's all good. But that's not music for yourself, and that's gonna jade you after a while. And I feel like even if you're doing really big things, like if you were touring the world as a pop artist, you have to still remember to be alone in your room with an acoustic guitar and sing a song for yourself every once in a while, because that's the thing that got you into it in the first place. And if you forget that, then you're kind of lost.
Totally. That's awesome. That's tremendous advice. Thank you.
Yeah, man.
I'm going to ask you a theory question. It's going to be sort of a more simple, easier, more beginner
Okay.
theory type question, but a particular person wanted to hear you explain it. How would you explain modes to a guitar player?
Okay, so you got the major scale, right? So the major scale, you can start on notes besides the first note of the major scale. So if you play the major scale starting on like C, you can go C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And you can say that C is the first scale degree. But you could also start the C major scale on the second scale degree. So you could start it on D instead of C. So instead of C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, you could go D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. And if you start on the second degree, we say that that's the second mode, and that is the Dorian mode. And the third scale degree, if you started on E, for example, that would be the Phrygian mode. If you started on the fourth scale degree, that's the Lydian mode. The fifth scale degree, that's the Mixolydian mode. The sixth scale degree, that's the Aeolian mode. And the seventh scale degree is the Locrian or Locrian mode. And they're all named after ancient Greek city-states. And I could not tell you why. They're just named after places in ancient Greece. And there's a long, long history that nobody actually quite knows. And I've tried to figure out exactly why they're named each thing. And it's incredibly complicated. And there's music scholars that dedicate their lives to trying to figure out why they're named the way that they are, but that's what we have. Thousands of years. We've gotten Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian. And if you just start the major scale on one, we say that's the Ionian mode. So that's the modes. And they're kind of used interchangeably with scales, but what a mode is just where in the scale you're starting from. So the second mode of C major is D Dorian. The third mode of C major is E Phrygian. That is what a mode is. Ta-da.
Thank you. Yeah. He's like, I think I know it, but I want Adam to say it.
Oh, God.
I'll ask him. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, sure. That's my spiel on mode, I guess.
Yeah. Tim, that was for you, buddy. There you go. What's your favorite mode?
Oh. Okay, so out of the C major modes, probably Dorian. I think Dorian is just sounds really nice. It goes over a minor, like a minor 7 chord, really, really nice. You got, if we're starting on D, that F is the flat 3, and if you're thinking about it in relationship to D major, so D, F, and then you also have that B natural, which is this, basically, you can think of it as the 6th scale degree or the natural 6. It just has a nice sound. I don't know. It's nice. If we're thinking about modes of other scales besides the major scale, like you can have modes of the melodic minor scale, you can have modes of the harmonic minor scale. I really like Lydian flat 7, which is the 4th mode of the melodic minor scale. It has the sharp 4 and the flat 7, and it has a really particular sound that's really nice. It's a very useful scale for improvising over dominant 7th chords. Jazz musicians use Lydian flat 7 all the time. Sometimes it's called the overtone scale. Sometimes it's called the Mixolydian sharp 4. That's probably my favorite mode if we're talking all the modes. But if we're talking the major modes, Dorian. Dorian's a really solid mode.
Agreed. If someone were to be, just coming into stepping it beyond just the major scale, the minor scale, and they want to get into that type of, the next level, what music should they be listening to let their ear hear? Oh, this is what a Dorian progression would sound like. This is what a Mixolydian.
That's a good question because not all the time. It's sometimes difficult to really hone in on a piece of music that's Dorian or Lydian. There's a series that I love. This is a fairly old YouTube series, but it's a series that I love from a friend of mine by the name of Ben Levin, and he calls it Zelda Modes. And he found a lot of music from the Zelda video game series that just focuses on specific modes, and you can go check that out. Saria's song or Saria's song is in Lydian, and then there's like different modes from the Zelda scene, the Zelda series that you can really hear. Milestones by Miles Davis uses the Aeolian mode. So What also by Miles Davis, uses the Dorian. What I don't know. It's hard for me to like pick out specific things right now,
Right.
but that's like probably a good resource. Zelda modes.
Cool.
But most of the time when you're listening to it, a mode is a tool for improvisers to improvise over certain chords. That's one way of thinking about modes. And so very rarely will you have one piece of music that's entirely within a mode, at least within the Western system, the Western canon, and like rock music and jazz music. That's not really how it works in like Western music. If you take a look at how rags or ragas work in Indian music or whatever, you'll be in a particular mode for a long period of time, but there are much more strict rules for how the mode works. Like sometimes you have to go up a certain way and then down a different way. Like there might be different notes that you have to use when you're going down versus going up, which is a really interesting concept that sometimes happens in the West, like how melodic minor sometimes works in classical music. Sometimes melodic minor, you have to go up a certain way and down a different way in Western classical music. But it's a much different system in Indian music. So yeah, lots of stuff to talk about with modes.
Yeah, I tell you, it's with the guitar students, it's a hard thing for them to grasp because I feel like it just doesn't compute the same way as maybe a piano student. You can just see it a little differently, and it's a struggle.
With guitarists, it's such a visual instrument and such a tactile instrument. So you can see everything. They're patterns that you just like, well, this is the pattern.
Right.
But then you then have to abstract it. You have to like add words to it that you don't really need in the beginning, and it's much harder to get to that point later. One thing I like talking about and just thinking about the bassist Jaco Pastorius, arguably like the greatest bass player of all time. He didn't know how to read up until like very late in his performing career. Like he was playing all these gigs, and then he eventually needed to start reading music after he was playing these gigs. And he said that it was the hardest struggle of his life because he had to basically relearn the instrument because he had to learn how to read, and he already knew how to play, but now there's some weird stuff that you're forcing on the instrument and you already know how to do it. So it can be a struggle sometimes when you know physically how to play all these things, but you just need to now apply the theory to it. And it's just it's a disconnect. It's a huge disconnect because theory is just words. And in theory should help you play. But if it's getting in the way of you playing, it doesn't make sense. You revolt against it.
Yep.
So it is something, unfortunately, that to take it to the next level, you sometimes have to relearn how to play your entire instrument, and there's no real way around that. There really isn't. So guitarists will have that struggle every time, unfortunately.
That's what we try and do with our, when someone comes in as a fresh guitar player, just trying to learn the instrument. Over the first couple of months, we'll sprinkle in little bits of theory, but never really explain entirely what we're saying. And then
sneak it in there.
Yeah. And then after maybe the fifth lesson, tie up some of those crumbs and make a little cupcake and say, oh, that's why we said this, and that. And then by the time they're a year into it, they're learning it, but it's in the back door. They don't know they're learning it.
Yeah. I mean, it depends because for certain things, you don't need to know theory or you don't need to know as much theory as other things. But then, one of the reasons why jazz, I gravitated to jazz originally was because you kind of need to learn how things relate to keys and chords in order to play jazz. And it was like the intellectual music. And then I learned much later that no, it's actually a lot deeper than that. It's not just thinking about it. There's much more about like the groove and the feel and the melodic aspects that go way beyond the theory. Yeah. But that was what drew me to it initially as kind of like the kind of person I was. I feel like there's always a stage after theory that stage after, I should say, a stage after scales and chords and all that stuff that a lot of people can miss, and a lot of people should at least know that it exists because it takes music to the bigger level, the bigger picture, the feelings and the emotions and the how we connect with people. But theory always feels like this kind of weird block, this middle ground that's like, I don't know, there's a lot of struggle with it and against it. And sometimes people get stuck in it because if you're a certain kind of person, you just are like, yes, I want to know all the theory and I want to know all the scales. But then it's just like this swamp that you don't want to go into. And once you're into it, sometimes you don't want to come out of it. I don't know. There's a lot to say and yet not that much to say about it.
No, dude, but it's so accurate because like I started playing guitar around 13. My teacher tried to show it to me, and all I wanted to learn was Metallica songs and the girls I was into.
Oh, of course, yeah.
It's like, oh, girls and Metallica, that's what I was made of. And
Hell
then
yeah.
In college, I took I was a music major and I had to fill an elective, and I took a jazz appreciation class, and I was like, whoa! And they sent us to I think Rutgers has a campus in Newark, and they had like a jazz library there or something. And I was like, holy crap, this is amazing. The teacher who taught that class was a guitarist, so I took private jazz guitar lessons from him for 2 years. And then I had to just like you said, I had to put the theory in and relearn I'm a rocker, and I had to relearn everything. I didn't know what seventh chords were. I didn't know anything. It's crazy. So I'm an open book. I tell that to my students to prevent them from going through that. But it's cool to hear that I'm not alone in that horrible experience.
Yeah. I fortunately, well, I did learn reading like a little bit later, and reading's a little bit different than theory. It's kind of related, but kind of not also. It was, it's a pain. And the value, I mean, sometimes people question like what the value of theory is, and all theory is just a way of communicating, way of thinking about it, just a way of thinking about it, which might be useful and it might not. Chances are, though, it will be useful. And for anybody who is learning their craft, theory is just the words that go along with it. And it's nice to have a series of words that go along with the physical motions, because if you're wanting to communicate anything with anybody, knowing that that's a major seventh, that's helpful. That's really helpful. That's, I can't, there's no way around it. This is a practical thing. There's no like, this is just like a way of talking with another person. And if you don't have that vocabulary, it can be hard to make that connection with another person, another musician, and bringing it back around to the idea like music's important for connections between people. Theory is how you do that. If you want to just say like, hey guys, can we modulate down a minor third on the bridge? Okay, but I think that maybe we add a 2/4 bar there just to like give a little lift or something. And that's a communication with a band, and that communication happened like that.
Right.
And there wasn't this, and it's a fairly complicated, intricate kind of idea, the idea of modulation and adding time signatures and what you do. But because there's a shared vocabulary with people and musicians who might know that shared vocabulary, that musical moment will happen instantaneously, and people will be able to pre-hear what that musical moment will be because there is a musical vocabulary to describe it. And that's necessary. It's just
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome, dude. That was really you justified it in a really cool way. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, man. Yeah, of course.
All right, so this is my closing segment. This is new. This is my third time doing it. It's my rapid fire questions.
All right.
So a lot of these are more in the rock realm and even more guitar than bass. So I'm going to have to try and change them on the fly. But you're going to pick one thing or the other thing. You don't have to justify your answer. It's nothing heavy or political or weird. It's just music stuff. Okay, jazz bass or P bass?
P bass.
Ampeg or Galen Kruger?
Ampeg. God.
Okay.
GK. Ugh.
I'll give you some of the guitar ones. Les Paul or Strat?
Strat.
Strat or Telly?
Ooh, Telly.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Martin or Taylor?
Martin.
Delay or reverb?
Ooh, delay. Delay.
Fuzz or overdrive?
Overdrive.
Phaser or chorus?
Chorus.
Okay. Beatles or Stones?
Beatles.
John or Paul?
I'll go with Paul.
Cool. I go Paul too.
Yeah.
Zeppelin or Floyd?
Ooh. I gotta go with Floyd on that one, actually.
Also the correct answer. Okay, this is a polarizing one. Dark Side or The Wall?
I'll go with Dark Side, I guess. I don't know.
Okay.
That one's a hard one.
That is hard. There's no wrong answer to that question.
All right.
Pearl Jam or Nirvana?
Nirvana. I don't know. I don't have I don't have strong opinions either way, honestly.
Okay. Sammy Hagar or David Lee Roth?
I have no opinion whatsoever.
Okay. And then our last one, Lemmy or God?
Lemmy or God? There is no difference. It's the same thing. Corporate wants you to show the differences between these two pictures.
Awesome,
man.
dude. Thank you for getting that last one.
Yeah.
I asked it to someone, and they're offended by it. I'm like, no.
No.
Thank you, Adam Neely,
Of
for
course.
your time, dude.
Yeah, this was fun. Thanks for having me again.
Incredible. This will exist on YouTube and such for people to check out the replays. But thank you so much. Stay safe. You're in the city. The numbers are safe, hopefully. And
More or less, yeah. But yeah, I'm staying safe. But thank you, man.
good, man. Awesome, dude. All right. Well, hopefully maybe down the road we'll do another one, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, this was fun. Take it easy.
Awesome, dude. Bye.